You're telling me that my presentation, with my data, my projections, my risk analysis, all of it, is somehow now his idea? Lily's voice cut through the conference room like a blade, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the mahogany table. Robert Mitchell, the airport's chief operations officer, didn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable. He leaned back in his leather chair, his pale fingers steepled under his chin, and smiled. That smile, cold, entitled, dismissive, would haunt Lily for years to come. "Lily, I think you're confused about the chain of command here," he said slowly, as if explaining basic math to a child. "When you work under my supervision, your ideas become departmental property. I refined your initial concept, presented it to the board, and secured the funding. That's leadership. 3 months ago, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport was hemorrhaging money. A catastrophic security breach had led to a 2-week shutdown, costing the city $47 million in lost revenue and destroying public confidence. Insurance companies were threatening to pull coverage. Airlines were considering rerouting their hubs. The airport, one of the busiest in the world, was on the verge of collapse. My name is Lily Chen, and I'm the person who figured out how to save it. At 32 years old, I'd spent 7 years working as a senior systems analyst in the airport's operations division. My job was supposed to be routine: monitor passenger flow, optimize gate assignments, manage the chaos of 275,000 daily travelers moving through 207 gates. But I saw patterns nobody else noticed. I saw the fractures in the system that the security breach had exposed, and I saw exactly how to fix them. For 3 months, I worked 18-hour days. I skipped meals, canceled plans, survived on cold coffee and determination. I built a comprehensive AI-powered security and operations framework that would revolutionize not just Atlanta's airport, but potentially every major transportation hub in America. Predictive threat analysis, real-time passenger tracking integrated with TSA protocols, automated resource allocation that could cut costs by 34%, while improving security measures by 60%. The numbers were undeniable. The solution was brilliant. And when I finally presented it to Robert Mitchell, my direct supervisor, I genuinely believed I was about to change my career forever. I was right about that last part, just not in the way I'd imagined. Refined my concept? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. Around the conference table, 3 other department heads avoided my eyes. They knew. Every single person in this room knew exactly what was happening, and not one of them was going to speak up. "Lily, I'm going to need you to adjust your tone," Robert said, his smile fading. "You're becoming emotional, and that's not professional." Emotional. The word landed like a slap. When white men raised their voices in meetings, they were passionate or driven. When I did it, I was emotional. When they took credit for others' work, they were strategic. When I called it out, I was unprofessional. "The board meeting is in 20 minutes, Robert continued, straightening his tie. "I'll be presenting the Atlanta Aviation Security Initiative to secure the implementation budget. You're welcome to attend, but I'll need you to stay quiet. We don't want any confusion about ownership." "Ownership?" The word exploded out of me. "Robert, I have the original files. Timestamps, metadata, everything. I have 3 months of development documentation with my name on every single page." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation. He'd already thought of this. "You mean the files you developed using company resources on company time, under my direction?" He stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. "Lily, I'm going to give you some advice. You're a talented analyst. You have a future here if you're smart about it. But if you try to make this into some kind of situation, you'll find that the airport authority takes intellectual property disputes very seriously. And trust me, you don't want to go up against our legal team." The threat was clear. Fight this and I'd lose everything. "Now I have a presentation to give," Robert said, gathering his leather portfolio. "The board is expecting to hear about how I've spent the last 3 months solving our security crisis. You can either support your team, or you can make this difficult for everyone." He walked past me, and I caught his cologne, expensive European, the kind that cost more than my monthly rent.
As he reached the door, he paused. Double quotes. Oh, and Lily.
HR will want to see you this afternoon. There've been some concerns about your recent performance. Nothing serious, just a formality. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I stood there in the empty conference room, my reflection staring back at me from the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the airfield. Beyond the glass, planes took off and landed with mechanical precision, carrying people to destinations all over the world, all of them trusting that the systems keeping them safe actually worked. Systems I designed. Systems Robert Mitchell was about to claim as his own. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer, my colleague in IT.
Lily, I'm so sorry.
We all know it's your project, but Mitchell has the SVP's ear. Be careful. I looked down at my hands. They'd stopped shaking. Something cold and clear was settling over me, replacing the shock and rage. I'd spent my entire career being careful, being professional, playing by rules that were designed to keep people like me in our place. And where had it gotten me? If this story is hitting close to home, make sure you're subscribed to see how this plays out, because what Robert Mitchell didn't know was that I'd already made copies of everything. And I was about to learn that sometimes the only way to win a rigged game is to flip the entire board. The boardroom on the executive floor was a different world from where I normally worked. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Atlanta's skyline. The conference table was actual Italian marble. Even the water glasses looked like they cost more than my weekly paycheck. I sat in the back row, exactly where Robert had positioned me, far enough from the table that I wasn't technically part of the presentation, but close enough that my presence suggested I'd somehow been involved in a supportive capacity. 12 board members filled the room.
I recognized most of them from company newsletters, venture capitalists, city council liaisons, airline executives, the airport authority director.
People who controlled budgets that could make or break careers with a single vote.
Robert stood at the head of the table, looking every bit the confident executive in his tailored navy suit.
Behind him, a massive screen displayed the first slide of my presentation.
The title read, Atlanta Aviation Security Initiative, a comprehensive solution by Robert Mitchell.
My name appeared nowhere. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 months ago we faced an existential crisis. Robert began, his voice smooth and authoritative. The security breach cost us $47 million, damaged relationships with every major airline, and threatened our position as America's busiest airport. Today, I'm here to present the solution. He clicked to the next slide. My analysis of the breach's root causes. Data I'd spent weeks compiling. Patterns I'd identified by cross-referencing 5 years of security logs with passenger flow algorithms. After extensive research and development, I've created an AI-powered framework that addresses every vulnerability exposed by the breach. Robert continued.
He gestured to the screen with practiced ease, as if he'd spent months building these models, instead of seeing them for the first time 2 weeks ago.
I watched him present my risk matrices, my predictive algorithms, my cost-benefit projections. He stumbled slightly over the technical specifications because he didn't actually understand how any of it worked,
but he recovered quickly with confident generalizations.
Implementation costs are estimated at $3 million, with a projected ROI of 340% over 5 years, he said, displaying my financial models. More importantly, this system will position Atlanta as the global leader in aviation security innovation. The board members leaned forward, impressed. I could see it in their faces. This was exactly what they needed. A solution that was both innovative and financially sound.
A way to turn a catastrophe into a competitive advantage.
Mr. Mitchell, this is extraordinary work, said Margaret Chen, the airport authority director. No relation to me, despite sharing a last name.
How soon can we begin implementation?
With board approval today, we could have Phase 1 operational within 6 months. And you developed this entirely in-house? Asked David Morrison, a silver-haired venture capitalist. Robert's eyes flicked to me for just a fraction of a second. I had support from my team naturally, but the core concept, the architecture, the integration strategy, that was all me.
I've spent the better part of 3 months living and breathing this project. The lie was so smooth, so casual, that I almost doubted my own memory.
I motion to approve implementation funding, Margaret said. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. Seconded, Morrison added. All in favor? A chorus of ayes filled the room. Excellent, Margaret smiled at Robert. Mr.
Mitchell, on behalf of the board, I'd like to authorize a performance bonus of $2 million to be paid upon successful Phase 1 completion.
Exceptional work deserves exceptional recognition. $2 million. For my work. Robert's smile was genuine now, triumphant. Thank you. I won't let you down. As the board members stood, shaking Robert's hand and congratulating him, I remained frozen in my chair. Jennifer had been right to warn me. This wasn't just theft, it was systematic erasure. In the span of 30 minutes, 3 months of my life had been attributed to someone else, and there wasn't a single person in this room who questioned it. Because Robert Mitchell looked like what a successful executive was supposed to look like. And I didn't. Lily, HR is waiting for you, Robert said as he passed my chair, his voice low enough that only I could hear. Don't keep them waiting. Sandra Perkins had been the airport's HR director for 15 years.
Her office was decorated with motivational posters about team culture and workplace
harmony. A small plaque on her desk read, "Every voice matters here." Lily, thank you for coming, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Her tone was warm, but her eyes were calculating. I wanted to discuss some concerns that have been brought to my attention. I sat down, my mind still reeling from watching Robert receive $2 million for stealing my project. Concerns? Sandra pulled out a folder, opening it with careful precision. Over the past 3 months, several colleagues have reported that you've been difficult to work with, territorial about projects, resistant to collaboration, occasionally hostile in meetings. That's not true. I have documentation here from Mr. Mitchell noting multiple instances where you've challenged his decisions publicly, questioned his leadership, and created tension within the department. Of course she did.
Robert had been building his case against me while he was stealing my work.
Robert Mitchell stole my project, I said bluntly. The presentation he just gave to the board, every single element of it was developed by me.
I have the original files, the research, everything. Sandra's expression didn't change.
Lily,
I understand that team dynamics can sometimes create confusion about who contributed what to a project.
But making accusations like this is serious, Mr.
Mitchell is a respected member of our executive team. I'm not confused.
I spent 3 months. According to Mr. Mitchell's documentation, you were assigned to assist with data collection for his security initiative. He acknowledges your contributions in that capacity, but the strategic vision and implementation framework were his own. Assist with data collection. That's what my 3 months of work had been reduced to. I want to file a formal complaint, I said. Intellectual property theft. I have evidence. Sandra closed the folder slowly. Lily, I'm going to be honest with you.
The airport authority takes allegations like this very seriously. If you proceed with a formal complaint, we'll have to launch a full investigation.
That means reviewing your entire employment history, your performance records, your communications. It means depositions, legal proceedings, months of scrutiny. The threat was clear. Fight this, and we'll destroy you. Mr. Mitchell has suggested an alternative, Sandra continued. He recognizes that you're a talented analyst. He's willing to overlook this afternoon's outburst. If you're willing to accept a lateral transfer to our Denver operations. Fresh start, new team, similar pay grade, Denver. 2,000 miles away from Atlanta. From my evidence, from any chance of proving what Robert had done. And if I refuse? Then we proceed with documenting your performance issues. 3 months of territorial behavior, resistance to authority, failure to support team leadership. Eventually, that leads to termination for cause. Which means no severance, no references, and a very difficult time finding equivalent employment in this industry. I'd spent 7 years building my career here. 7 years of arriving early, staying late, proving myself over and over again. And now I was being given a choice. Disappear quietly
or be destroyed.
My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory.
She'd raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. Worked 3 jobs to put me through college. Died 2 weeks after my graduation, never getting to see me walk across that stage.
Lily girl. She used to say, the world's gonna try to make you small.
Gonna try to convince you that you don't deserve what you've earned.
But you remember, you're not just fighting for yourself.
You're fighting for every girl who comes after you.
I stood up. I need time to think about it. Of course, Sandra said. Take the weekend. But I'll need your decision by Monday morning. I walked out of her office, down the corridor, past the motivational posters about integrity and teamwork. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number.
Saw the board meeting. I'm sorry, but be smart about this.
Mitchell has connections you don't. Jennifer. Another text came through, this one from Robert himself. Denver's nice this time of year. Great skiing.
Think about your future, Lily. I stood in the empty hallway, looking at those messages, and something crystallized in my mind. Robert thought he'd won. He thought I'd either run away to Denver or get myself fired trying to fight a battle I couldn't win.
What he didn't know was that I'd been recording every conversation for the past 2 weeks. That I'd copied every file to 3 separate encrypted drives. That I'd already documented the timestamps, the metadata, the digital fingerprints that proved every line of code, every analysis, every projection had come from my computer, not his. Robert Mitchell had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. And that mistake was going to cost him everything.
I didn't go home that Friday night.
Instead, I drove to my grandmother's old house in East Point, the house she'd left me, the one I'd been too sentimental to sell even though I couldn't afford the upkeep. It was the only place I knew Robert Mitchell's influence couldn't reach. The basement still had her old desktop computer, completely offline.
Disconnected from any network. Perfect. I spent the entire weekend organizing evidence. 3 encrypted drives, 4 months of recorded conversations, 847 emails.
Development logs with timestamps that proved every single line of code had originated from my workstation. I built a timeline so airtight that even the airport's expensive legal team couldn't dispute it. But evidence alone wouldn't be enough. Robert had something I didn't: institutional power. He could bury my complaint in bureaucracy, drag it out in legal proceedings until I ran out of money for lawyers.
I needed something bigger. Something public.
Something that would make it impossible for the airport authority to sweep this under the corporate rug. Monday morning, I walked into Sandra's office with my decision. I'm not taking the Denver transfer. Her carefully maintained expression cracked slightly. Lily, I strongly advise. And I'm not filing a formal complaint through HR either. Now she looked genuinely confused. Then what exactly are you planning to do? My job, I said simply. I'm going to continue working as a senior systems analyst, fulfilling my contracted duties and supporting the implementation of the security initiative. After all, someone needs to actually understand how the system works. Sandra studied me for a long moment. Mr. Mitchell won't be comfortable with that arrangement. Mr. Mitchell doesn't have grounds to fire me. I haven't violated any policies. My performance reviews have been exemplary for 7 years. If he wants me gone, he'll have to create a paper trail that makes his theft look even more obvious. I left before she could respond. Robert's reaction came within the hour. I was in my cubicle, reviewing implementation schedules when he appeared behind me. What game are you playing? He hissed, his voice low enough that our coworkers wouldn't hear. I turned slowly in my chair. No game. Just doing my job. You turned down Denver. Sandra says you're not filing a complaint.
So, you're just going to stay here and pout?
I'm going to stay here and work. Unless you'd like to explain to the board why you're firing the person who actually built the system you're implementing. His face reddened. You're making a mistake, Lily. A serious mistake.
Am I?
I met his eyes directly.
Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one who has to spend the next 6 months pretending to understand a system you didn't create.
What happens when the board asks technical questions you can't answer? When implementation hits problems you don't know how to solve? He leaned closer, his cologne overwhelming in the small space. I'll figure it out. I always do. And when this project succeeds, Nobody's going to remember or care about one bitter analyst who couldn't handle being part of a team. After he left, my hands were shaking, but not from fear. From barely contained rage. A message popped up on my screen. Internal chat from someone I didn't recognize. Conference room 7B 15 minutes. Come alone. Conference room 7B was in the old administrative wing, rarely used since the renovations. I found a man in his late 40s waiting there. His visitor badge identifying him as James Patterson, though something about the way he stood suggested that might not be his real name. Ms. Chun, thank you for meeting me. Who are you? Someone who's been watching Robert Mitchell for a very long time. He pulled out a tablet, showing me a photograph of a young black woman I didn't recognize. Her name was Angela Reeves. 5 years ago, she was a junior developer in Mitchell's previous department. She created a revolutionary passenger flow algorithm that saved the airport $3 million annually. My stomach dropped. He stole it. He did. Angela fought back. Filed complaints, gathered evidence, even hired a lawyer. Mitchell buried her in legal fees and got her fired for creating a hostile work environment. Last I heard, she's working retail in Phoenix, couldn't get another job in the industry. Her career was destroyed at 27 years old. Why are you telling me this? James closed the tablet. Because I'm a reporter. Investigative journalism, corporate corruption, civil rights violations. I've been building a story about systematic intellectual property theft in the aviation industry for 2 years. Robert Mitchell is at the center of it, but I haven't been able to prove the pattern. Until now. You want my evidence. I want to expose him. Properly. Not through HR complaints that get buried or legal battles that drag on forever. I want a story that runs in the Washington Post, The Atlantic, NPR. I want Robert Mitchell's face on the cover of every business magazine as an example of everything wrong with corporate America. I should have been cautious. Should have asked for credentials, done background checks, verified everything he was claiming. But something in his voice, the same controlled fury I felt burning in my chest, told me he was telling the truth. There are others, James continued. Mitchell has been doing this for at least a decade. Different companies, different victims, same pattern. He targets talented people without institutional power women, people of color, anyone he thinks won't be able to fight back effectively. He steals their work, claims credit, collects bonuses and promotions, then either drives them out or destroys their credibility if they complain. How many? That I can confirm. 7. Including you and Angela. The real number is probably higher. 7 people. 7 careers destroyed. 7 brilliant ideas stolen. And Robert Mitchell had gotten away with it every single time because the system protected people like him. What do you need from me? I asked. Everything. Documentation, recordings, testimony. But more importantly, I need you to stay exactly where you are. Keep working on the implementation. Let Mitchell think he's won. Because the moment he realizes the security system actually depends on you, the moment something goes wrong that he can't fix, that's when he'll expose himself completely. You want me to sabotage the project? No, I want you to let him sabotage himself. Men like Mitchell, they're so confident in their superiority that they don't bother learning the details. They assume they can fake it, that their charm and connections will carry them through. But when you're implementing a complex AI system in a major international airport, you can't fake expertise. Eventually, something will break. And when it does, the entire board will see that the Emperor has no clothes. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert. Phase 1 technical review meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'll need you to prepare implementation notes for me, detailed ones. I have investor calls all afternoon and won't have time to review the specifications. I showed the message to James. He smiled grimly. Perfect. He's already asking you to do his homework. Start documenting every request like that. Every time he asks you to explain something he should already know. Every technical question he can't answer. Every moment where it's obvious he doesn't understand the system he supposedly created. This could take months. Good stories always do. But I promise you, Lily, when this breaks, it won't just destroy Robert Mitchell. It'll expose the entire system that enabled him.
airport authorities that don't verify credentials, HR departments that protect executives over employees, boards that hand out million-dollar bonuses without basic due diligence. He handed me a burner phone. Encrypted. Untraceable. Use it to send me documentation. Don't use your personal devices. Don't use airport networks. Mitchell has friends in IT who monitor employee communications. After he left, I sat in that empty conference room, holding the burner phone, my mind racing through possibilities. For the first time since Robert had stolen my project, I didn't feel helpless. I felt dangerous. My grandmother used to say that patience was a weapon most people never learn to use. Robert Mitchell wanted a quick victory, steal the project, take the credit, move on to his next victim. He thought I'd either disappear or exhaust myself fighting a battle I couldn't win. But I wasn't interested in quick victories anymore. I was interested in complete destruction. That night, I sent James Patterson the first batch of files. Documentation proving that every technical element of the Atlanta Aviation Security Initiative had originated from my work, recordings of Robert's threats. Sandra's offer to make me disappear to Denver. Timeline data showing that Robert had never accessed the development servers until after I'd presented the completed project to him. His response came within minutes. "This is extraordinary. Keep going. And Lily, be careful." Men like Mitchell get dangerous when they realize they're losing control. I looked at that message for a long time, then deleted it and powered down the burner phone. Be careful. Everyone kept telling me to be careful. To be professional. To be smart. But nobody ever told Robert Mitchell to be any of those things. And that double standard was about to become his downfall. The technical failure happened exactly 3 weeks into Phase 1 implementation. I was in my cubicle when the emergency alert went off, a catastrophic system error in the predictive threat analysis module. The AI was flagging every third passenger as a security risk, creating massive backups at every checkpoint. TSA was threatening to shut down the entire security operation. Airlines were missing departure windows. The airport was descending into chaos. My phone lit up with frantic texts from operations managers. Then Robert's name appeared. My office. Now. He was pacing when I arrived, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his tie loosened. "Fix it." "Fix what?" "Don't play games with me. The threat analysis module is malfunctioning. The board is threatening to pull funding. I have investors flying in tomorrow to see the system working." "Fix it." Looked at him calmly. "The module is working exactly as programmed. The malfunction is in the integration layer, specifically in the authentication protocols you insisted on modifying last week." His face went pale. "I didn't modify anything. You signed off on the changes. Your email approval is in the system logs." I pulled out my tablet, showing him his own authorization. "You wanted to streamline the process, remember? Reduce redundancy?" I advised against it, but you said I was being unnecessarily cautious. That conversation had been recorded, of course. Like everything else. Then undo the changes. It's not that simple. The modified protocols are now integrated with 17 other subsystems. Reverting them requires rebuilding the entire authentication architecture from scratch. That's a minimum 48 hours of work, assuming nothing else breaks. I don't have 48 hours. The investor presentation is tomorrow at 2 p.m. Then I suggest you explain to them why their $2 million investment in your leadership is currently causing a security meltdown. Robert's hand slammed down on his desk. You did this on purpose. You sabotaged the system to make me look bad. I did nothing except warn you that your modifications would cause exactly this problem. You overrode my objections because you assumed you knew better. But you don't actually understand how the system works, do you, Robert? You never did. Get out, he hissed. You're suspended pending investigation. Security will escort you from the building. On what grounds? Sabotage. Insubordination. Take your pick. I stood up slowly. Interesting. Because according to airport policy, you can't suspend an employee without HR approval and documented cause. But go ahead, call Sandra. Tell her you're suspending the only person who can actually fix the system you supposedly designed. I'm sure that'll go over well with the board.
His phone rang before he could respond. Margaret Chun's name flashed on the screen. He answered it, and even from across the desk, I could hear her furious voice. Mr. Mitchell, I'm standing in the main terminal watching a complete security disaster unfold. Please tell me you have this under control. Just a minor technical issue, Margaret. We're resolving it now. A minor issue? We've had to divert 3 international flights. Delta is threatening to move their hub operations. How soon can you fix this? Robert's eyes locked on mine. Give me 48 hours. You don't have 48 hours. The emergency board meeting is in 2 hours. Conference room A. Be prepared to explain how your $2 million security initiative just created the worst operational failure in this airport's history. The call disconnected. Robert stood there, his face cycling through emotions, rage, panic, desperation. Finally, he looked at me. Help me, he said quietly. Please, I'll make sure you get recognition for the implementation work. A bonus. Promotion. Whatever you want. What I want, I said, is for you to walk into that board meeting and tell them the truth. What truth? That you didn't create this system. That you stole it from me, took credit for my work, and then broke it because you don't actually understand what you're supposedly an expert in. His expression hardened. That's not happening. Then good luck explaining to the board how your revolutionary AI system just failed. Catastrophically. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Robert? Those investors flying in tomorrow? James Patterson from the Washington Post will be with them. He's writing a fascinating story about systematic intellectual property theft in corporate America. I think you'll find it very illuminating. I left him standing there, the color draining from his face. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 6 p.m., but by 4:30, the main conference room was already filling with airport executives, airline representatives, and most notably members of the press. James Patterson had moved faster than I'd anticipated. His preliminary article had dropped online an hour ago. Airport COO's $2 million bonus based on stolen work. Exclusive investigation. The story detailed everything. My evidence, Angela Reeves' testimony. 3 other victims James had tracked down who'd suffered similar theft at Mitchell's hands. Timestamps, metadata, expert analysis of the code proving conclusively that I developed every aspect of the security initiative. But the most damaging part was the technical failure. James had gotten statements from TSA officials, airline executives, operations managers all confirming that the system was collapsing because Mitchell had authorized modifications he didn't understand. The emperor has no clothes, one anonymous airport employee was quoted as saying. And now everyone can see it. I watched from the back of the room as Robert walked in, flanked by 2 lawyers. His confident executive persona was gone, replaced by something desperate and cornered. Margaret Chen sat at the head of the table, her expression glacial. Mr. Mitchell, thank you for joining us. I assume you've seen the Washington Post article? It's defamatory, Robert said immediately. Completely false. I'm pursuing legal action against Ms. Chen? Margaret interrupted. The analyst who's been with this airport for 7 years with an impeccable record? The same analyst who, according to digital forensics our IT department ran this afternoon, created every single component of your security initiative on her personal workstation over a 3-month period? Robert's mouth opened, then closed. Margaret continued, her voice cutting. The same analyst who sent you a detailed memo warning that your authentication protocol modifications would cause system failures. A memo you ignored because, in your words, she was being unnecessarily cautious. I can explain. Please do. Explain how you received a $2 million bonus for work you didn't do. Explain how you've apparently been stealing intellectual property from your subordinates for over a decade. Most importantly, explain how you just caused a security catastrophe because you authorized technical changes to a system you fundamentally don't understand. If you've been following this journey and want to see how this ends, whether justice is truly served or if there's still more to this story, make sure you're subscribed. Because what happens next will determine whether this becomes a cautionary tale or a blueprint for change. The lawyers whispered frantically to Robert. Finally, one of them spoke. We'd like to request a private consultation with the board. Denied, Margaret said flatly. This meeting is being recorded. Transparency, Mr. Mitchell. You've been advocating for it in your campaign speeches. Let's practice it now. David Morrison, the venture capitalist, leaned forward. I've reviewed the evidence packet Ms. Chun provided.
The timestamps are conclusive.
The code repository shows clear attribution. Mr. Mitchell, did you or did you not present another employee's work as your own? The room fell silent.
Robert looked around at the board members, the lawyers, the press.
His shoulders sagged. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible.
The core framework was, there were contributions from multiple sources. Yes or no, Mr. Mitchell? A long pause. Then, yes. The room exploded. The fallout was immediate and devastating.
Robert Mitchell was terminated within the hour. The airport authority released a statement announcing a full investigation
into his employment history and demanding return of the $2 million bonus. Criminal charges for fraud and intellectual property theft were being considered by the district attorney's office, but it got worse for him.
James Patterson's full investigative piece dropped the next morning. Front page of the Washington Post. 7 victims. A decade of systematic theft. Corporate environments that enabled predators like Mitchell by protecting institutional power over individual justice.
By noon, Mitchell's face was on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. His carefully constructed image, successful executive, innovative thinker, champion of operational excellence, shattered completely.
He became a symbol of everything toxic about corporate culture.
His wife filed for divorce 3 days later, citing the financial fraud and reputational damage. The professional organizations where he'd held leadership positions quietly removed his name from their boards.
His upcoming city council campaign collapsed before it officially launched.
Robert Mitchell had built his entire career on stolen brilliance.
And when the truth came out, there was nothing underneath except a mediocre man who'd been very good at taking credit for other people's genius.
Angela Reeves called me a week after the story broke. She was crying. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought I was crazy. I thought maybe I'd imagined how good my algorithm was, that maybe Mitchell really had improved it. Everyone made me feel like I was being paranoid and difficult, but I wasn't crazy." "No," I said. "You were right. We were all right. I got 3 job offers this week. Companies that saw the story and looked up my work. Real positions, good salaries. I can leave retail. I can have my career back."
That conversation meant more than any apology the airport authority could have offered.
6 months after Robert Mitchell's very public implosion, I stood in the same boardroom where he'd once stolen credit for my work. But this time, the presentation screen displayed a different title: Atlanta Aviation Security Initiative, System Architecture and Leadership by Lily Chun, Director of Security Innovation. Director, not analyst. Not assistant. Director. The board had offered me Robert's position 3 days after his termination. I'd negotiated for 2 weeks before accepting, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted them to understand that my expertise had value. Real, measurable, non-negotiable value. The $2 million bonus that Robert was forced to return? The board voted to award it to me, along with back compensation for the 3 months I'd spent developing the system on what they now acknowledged were unreasonable timelines. After legal fees and taxes, I cleared $1.8 million. But the money, as satisfying as it was, wasn't the real victory. The real victory was standing in front of Fortune 500 executives, airport authorities from 12 countries, and a CNN camera crew, presenting the security framework that now operated flawlessly in Atlanta and was being licensed to 23 other airports worldwide. My framework.
With my name on every patent, every technical specification, every implementation guide. Margaret Chen approached me after the presentation, her expression thoughtful. "Lily, I owe you an apology.
The system failed you. We failed you. We should have verified Mitchell's claims from the beginning, should have protected our employees better." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." She didn't flinch from the directness. "We've implemented new protocols. Any employee claiming credit for technical work now has to provide documented evidence code repositories, development logs, peer reviews. HR has mandatory training on intellectual property rights and retaliation protection. It's not perfect, but it's a start. A start, I agreed. But the real test is what happens the next time someone like me raises concerns. Whether you believe them immediately, or whether they have to spend months gathering evidence and risking their careers just to be heard. Fair point. She paused. For what it's worth, you've inspired changes beyond this airport. The Washington Post story went viral. Other companies are reviewing their IP policies, their bonus structures, their promotion criteria. You started something significant. After she left, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from James Patterson, probably following up on the congressional hearing testimony I'd agreed to provide. 2 voicemails from universities asking me to speak to their engineering students. An email from a startup offering me a consulting position at a rate that would have seemed fictional a year ago. And 1 text from Angela Reeves. Just accepted a senior developer position at Microsoft. Salary is double what I made before Mitchell destroyed my career. Thank you for fighting when I couldn't. That message, more than anything else, crystallized what this had all been about. Robert Mitchell's descent had been as spectacular as his rise. Criminal charges for fraud and intellectual property theft resulted in a plea deal, 18 months in federal prison, 5 years probation, and a permanent ban from holding executive positions in any publicly traded company. His marriage ended in a brutal divorce that left him financially devastated. The professional network he'd spent decades building evaporated. Overnight, nobody wanted to associate with the man who'd become a symbol of corporate corruption. I saw him once, 3 months after his sentencing, in a Kroger parking lot. He was loading groceries into a 10-year-old Honda Civic, wearing a polo shirt with a retail store logo. Our eyes met for a brief moment across the parking lot. He looked away first. I didn't feel triumph in that moment. Didn't feel vindication or satisfaction. I felt nothing at all, and that emptiness was its own kind of freedom. Robert Mitchell had controlled so much of my emotional life for so long: fear, rage, determination, the burning need for justice. But standing there, watching him struggle with grocery bags in a car that cost less than 1 month of his former salary, I realized he was just irrelevant. He tried to erase me, to reduce 3 months of my brilliance to data collection assistance. Instead, he'd erased himself. The universe had a sense of irony after all. My grandmother's house in East Point, the one I'd almost sold a dozen times because I couldn't afford the upkeep, became my sanctuary during the months of testimony, interviews, and public attention. I renovated it, completely new roof, updated electrical, a state-of-the-art home office in what used to be her sewing room. But I kept her desk, the old wooden one where she'd balanced checkbooks and paid bills while raising me on 3 jobs and sheer determination. I kept her framed embroidery that hung above it. They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. That phrase meant something different to me now. One evening, as I was reviewing contracts for the international licensing deals, my doorbell rang. A young black woman stood there, maybe 24, wearing a visitor badge from the airport. Miss Chun? I'm sorry to bother you at home. I'm Jasmine Torres. I work in the IT department. She hesitated, nervous. I saw your story. Read about what happened with Mitchell. And I think my supervisor's doing the same thing to me. I invited her inside. For 2 hours, Jasmine told me about her supervisor claiming credit for her database optimization work, her innovative passenger tracking algorithms, her solutions to problems he couldn't solve. About being told she was too aggressive when she pushed back, not a team player when she asked for recognition. The pattern was identical. I don't know what to do, she said finally. I don't have your resources, your evidence collection. I'm still on probation, so they can fire me for any reason. And I'm scared that if I fight back, I'll end up like that woman in the article, Angela Reeves, working retail with a destroyed career. I looked at this young woman, brilliant and terrified, and saw myself a year ago. Here's what we're going to do, I said. First, you're going to document everything. Starting tonight. Every conversation, every project, every time stop. Second, you're going to call James Patterson. I'll give you his number. Third, you're going to know that you're not alone in this fight. Because I'm going to make sure your supervisor understands exactly what happens to people who steal from their employees.
Her eyes filled with tears. Why would you do that for me?
Because someone should have done it for Angela Reeves. Someone should have done it for all of us before the damage was done. I handed her my business card. And because the best revenge isn't just destroying the person who hurt you. It's making sure they can't hurt anyone else ever again. A year after everything fell apart and rebuilt itself into something stronger, I was invited to keynote at the National Society of Black Engineers Conference.
5,000 students and professionals filled the convention center ballroom.
I told them the truth, not a sanitized corporate version, but the real story. Being erased. Being threatened. Being given a choice between my dignity and my paycheck. The terror of fighting a system designed to protect people like Robert Mitchell while sacrificing people like me. But I also told them about the victory. About standing in front of that board and watching a thief's empire collapse under the weight of his own lies. About the moment Robert Mitchell had to say yes when asked if he'd stolen my work. About the 7 other victims who got their careers back because one person refused to stay silent.
They will try to steal from you, I said, because you're brilliant and brilliance is valuable.
And people without ethics will always try to take what they didn't earn. They'll tell you it's collaboration or team contributions or departmental work.
They'll make you feel crazy for insisting on recognition.
They'll threaten your job, your reputation, your future. The room was completely silent. But here's what they don't understand. They can steal your ideas, your code, your presentations. They can take credit and collect bonuses and build careers on your brilliance. But they can't steal the mind that created those ideas in the first place. That belongs to you. And eventually, inevitably, they'll be exposed because mediocre people can't maintain the illusion of genius indefinitely. I paused,
looking out at thousands of faces, young engineers who would face the same battles I had, who would be told they were too aggressive, too ambitious, too difficult.
Robert Mitchell tried to bury me. He thought he could erase 3 months of my life and nobody would notice or care. But he made one critical mistake. He underestimated how strong you become when you stop being afraid of losing everything. Because once you accept that they might destroy your career, might ruin your reputation, might take everything you've built, once you accept that and decide to fight anyway, you become unstoppable.
The applause started slowly, then built into something overwhelming.
After the keynote, dozens of people approached me with their own stories. Stolen patents, plagiarized research, claimed innovations. Some had fought back. Others were still deciding whether the battle was worth the cost. I gave them all the same advice. Document everything, find your allies, and remember that staying silent protects predators while endangering everyone who comes after you. On the anniversary of the day Robert Mitchell presented my work to the board, I visited my grandmother's grave.
Placed fresh flowers on the headstone that read, Sarah Chen,
1945 to 2018, she raised warriors. I hope I made you proud, Grandma, I whispered.
I hope you're watching and you know that everything you taught me about dignity, about fighting for what's right, about refusing to be made small, I held on to all of it. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard.
The wind rustled through the oak trees overhead, and I chose to believe that was her answer. Robert Mitchell had tried to teach me that people like me don't get to win. That the system protects the Robert Mitchells of the world while sacrificing the Lily Chuns. But I'd learned something different. The system only works that way when we let it.
When we accept the silence they demand.
When we take the Denver transfers and the lateral moves and the quiet disappearances they offer instead of the justice we deserve. I didn't just beat Robert Mitchell.
I exposed him, humiliated him,
destroyed his career so thoroughly that he'll never steal from anyone again. And that destruction, public and complete, wasn't cruelty. It was mercy for everyone he would have victimized next. The best revenge isn't just building something greater than what they tried to take from you, though I did that too.
The best revenge is ensuring that when they reach for their next victim, everyone remembers what happened to them the last time they tried.
Which story resonates with you, the one about staying silent or the one about fighting back?
Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know where you're watching from. Your voice matters in these conversations.
Subscribe if you believe that brilliance deserves recognition, regardless of who created it, and that justice, even when it takes time,
Is always worth fighting for.